First of all, hi, y'all. Y'all can do better than that. Come on, hey, guys. Hey, friends. We're outside. We outside. Now, okay, I've been praying all day. Help me get through this without ugly crying in front of a room full of the most beautiful people I know. I'm going to try to hold it together for you guys.
So, Elaine, tip. It's just your allergies. It's
not
tears.
You know what? There's something in my eye.
It's just your allergies.
Yeah, it's my
somebody
contact.
that gets up in front of people and cries quite often. It's the allergies.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for that. We're going to hold each other and carry each other through this, right? You guys got me?
No question.
I know you got me.
I'm doing pretty good right now. So, yeah.
Somehow you're holding it together. You're the rock.
I'm holding it together, and it's not always the case, but.
Well, you held it together for me. Through one of the most vulnerable times in my whole life. I don't know.
Just let the tears fall. Okay.
Then somebody said it's uglier when you try to hold it in. Just let it out. But
look at my mom.
Okay, all right. No, she's not making it better. Anyway, let me just dive in, you guys. I just want to, first of all, say thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing up today. Not for me, but for, first of all, these incredible earth angels that are literally doing God's work to keep us alive. So please, let's start by just giving them a round of applause. And we're all here for all of the families that this issue affects. This issue is very near and dear to my heart, and I know it's near and dear to your hearts. That's why you're here in the middle of the day on a random Thursday. I don't know how you guys pulled this off, because I see some real busy, badass female bosses up in this room, and I just cannot tell you how much it means to me that you managed to show up for the shit that matters. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here. And I also just kind of want to set the table for this conversation, because we're obviously here talking about one of the most grim realities there is. And it's impossible to watch that clip of you, Charles, and not shed a tear. It's impossible. And I want to acknowledge that there are sensitivities in this room around this issue, because even if you do survive childbirth, for many of us, there is trauma that comes with it. And so I want to acknowledge those sensitivities. And at the same time, my intention in starting these conversations or encouraging these conversations is to do so through the lens of hope and collaboration and with a fix-it spirit. Because I think that when we hear these stats, we can so easily feel shut down. Like, it's too fucked up to fix. Mm-hmm. This system's too far gone. And let me just hope for the best on my journey, right? And the thing for me that I just cannot live with is that the data says 83% of these deaths are preventable. And when you come to understand that, it can do one of two things. It can make you feel hopeless, or it can motivate you to make a change. And I hope that this conversation and that this time that we spend together today encourages all of you guys to choose the latter. I certainly have, and that's why I'm telling my story, and that's why I'm here amplifying and partnering with these incredible people who are doing this work every single day, because the shit's gotta change. And I truly believe that if we approach this with the spirit of possibility and hope, that we can change these outcomes in our lifetime. Mm-hmm. Our children should not be facing these same statistics. And if they are, we didn't do our job. So with that, let's start the convo. And I don't want you guys to leave depressed. That's my goal, okay? I don't want everyone leaving here like crawling back into bed like, well, today's done. I want you guys to leave here energized, because you will recognize that we all can work together to change this. And I am sitting next to two people who are reminding me of that every single day. So when you feel like giving up or you feel like this thing's too big, think about these two incredible humans. And with that, Charles, you got a little something in your eye, bruh.
Listen.
Charles, you have been out here telling your incredibly tragic but powerful story. And so I want to start with talking about the power of storytelling with you. You have turned your anguish and your anger into an activated movement that is a beacon of light for people like me. And it was for me when I was in a dark place, when I felt like the hospital system was stealing my joy, stealing my hope. And I am so lucky to have met Kim, who reinstilled a sense of agency and helped me reclaim my power. But I want to talk to you about the power of storytelling in doing that. Is the storytelling working? What are the wins? What are the wins? Talk to us about what's changing and what's the next win you're after.
Elaine, that's a great question. So let me get to the edge of my seat and lean into this fix-it spirit. And so before I do that, I just really have to take a moment of just deep, deep gratitude. Deep, deep gratitude for all of you all for showing up, and for Bobbie for Change for showing out and putting this together. And a huge shout out to the birth workers. Where my doulas at? Doulas say, hey, right? Midwife say out, right? Like, so I am grateful for you all. Those of y'all who know me know that anytime I get an opportunity, I'm going to say as loud and as often as I can that doulas and midwives matter. To the OBs that are here that lead with love, thank you. Thank you for your service. For those of y'all who are just here because you have a passion and a heart for making things better, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your gifts. Thank you for sharing your time. And I have to touch on something that you said in the video that has to be by far one of the most profound things I've ever heard anybody say on this journey. And that is that you would be sorely mistaken to think that you can out-earn or out-learn your way out of what's going on here, right? So profound, and that's so true, and it definitely speaks to our personal situation. When we talk about storytelling and how impactful storytelling is and where I think it's been pivotal and instrumental in this fight, I also have to pay deference to the people that have been out here doing this work far before I even knew it was an issue, right? Who have been screaming from the top of their lungs that our women are dying and this is, you know what up, right? Because if my kids find out I was cursing as much as I get on them about their language, right? But I'm gonna let a couple fly. So I'm gonna let it fly, right? So so I'm grateful. But with that being said, when we talk about storytelling, and shouts out to Paula, who's just one of the most amazing storytellers, who's here and is a member of our board, and put that amazing clip together. So storytelling, where I think we made a huge difference in what I call this maternal health revolution, is I think that for decades, people had been focusing on the data, right? The numbers. And when you look at these statistics, they're heartbreaking. They're heartbreaking, but when data lands on your desk as a legislator, as a policymaker, you can look at that data, you can cringe, and you can turn the page. But what I think happened is when we started centering this around the personal stories, right? And we began to humanize this movement in a way, it's different. Because when I go to Capitol Hill, and if you're looking at a dossier full of data, you might be able to turn the page. But when I sit down in front of you, and I look you in your eye, and I tell you what it's like to tell an 18-month-old that his mother's never coming home, right? When I tell you what it's like to rock a child to sleep at 3 a.m. who will not stop crying, and I dare you not to support this. I dare you to explain to your constituents why mothers and babies simply aren't a priority, right? And so that's why I think the storytelling is so important. So the journalists who have used their gifts, the filmmakers, the people that are just simply sharing these stories by word of mouth, it is so important and it's impactful because it's allowed us to reframe this. This is not a women's health issue. This is not a Black women's issue. we have to frame this conversation for what it truly is it is a human rights issue. Every single woman in this country deserves to have the right to give birth to a healthy child and then live to raise that child, period. Right? And so that's where I really think storytelling, centering the stories of these women, and I could name names all day. I could name names all day, right? And each one of these lives is precious, but centering the stories, centering their lives and calling their names, we cannot discount how important that is and how important it will be continue to do, how important it will continue to be. But I also want to be clear that this has to end with us, right? One of the toughest questions I've ever been asked in this work, to piggyback on what you said, Elaine, was I was in Texas. I'll never forget where I was, and a woman asked me, she said, "Charles, do you hope that your boys will pick up this work after you're done?" And the thought that this would still be a problem when my boys are ready to have kids, So we're going to fix this, and sooner than later, we're going to be able to talk about this crisis in the historical context.
Before we move to you, Kim, Charles, if you can share with us some of your wins. How is your storytelling moving the needle?
So I think from...
And your advocacy, let's be very clear.
Sure. So I think that from a legislative standpoint, what you saw in that video is we were able to pass the first ever piece of federal legislation to prevent women from dying in childbirth. It's called H.R. 1318, a.k.a. the Preventing Maternal Deaths Act. And we passed that in 2017 with unanimous consent during one of the most divisive times in politics in our lifetime. We're talking about smack dab in the middle of Trump's first term, right? And where people couldn't agree on nothing. And so we got it done. So that was huge. We've passed legislation here in California, the California Momnibus. We've passed legislation in several states, including my home state of Georgia. We expanded postpartum Medicaid from, first it was only 6 weeks, then we expanded it to 6 months, and now it's a year postpartum, right? Getting companies to reimagine the way that they distribute maternal health benefits, right? Getting partners, corporate partners and stakeholders like Bobbie to come to the table in meaningful ways, right? And really show up and raise the standard of what's expected, right? Expected from the companies that we support. And we still have a lot to do, but Kira's brother always says something that just really sums this up, and it makes me emotional thinking about it. He says, you can't stop the ocean from rising. And I really feel that that's where we are. And I know that it's grim when we hear these stories and they're heartbreaking, but that's where we are. The tide is rising. The awareness, the momentum is unlike it's ever been before, and it's up to us to be good stewards of that momentum.
Mm-hmm. I love that. You mentioned raising expectations. I think that's a really, really important piece of this puzzle. And I think, a lot of times when we talk about this issue, we do so through the lens of grief and the loss of precious life. And we need that because it's a reminder of how bad it actually can be and how bad it is. But I also think that we need more success stories from Black women.
Absolutely.
Who are showing you what it can be like and what you deserve and what your alternative options are.
Yes.
And that's part of why I'm telling my story, because I truly feared becoming a statistic when I was in this hospital system, not being able to find a doctor that cared about me, that made me feel seen and heard. And the experiences that I had were unbelievable. And to your point about what I said in there, it's like, some of us can think like, those stats don't apply to me somehow. Like we hear them and we think, and we know how heartbreaking it is, but for some reason we think it won't apply to me. And I found myself in these seats in front of doctors shrinking, trying to figure out how can I speak differently, sit differently, say less to make them care for me better than they are. Like, what do I gotta change? What do I have to do? And that's not how it should be. But I think those stats sometimes lower the expectations for Black women. We think this is just how it is. It's fucked up. So
Survival should not be the goal.
Right. Thriving should
be the goal.
That is it. That's it. And so I want to talk to you, Kim, because you are the sole reason that I am a living example of how much better it can be. And that we don't have to set our sights on just surviving childbirth, but we can thrive. I thrived because of you and the care model that you introduced me to. And so I know that you are telling your story as well through a documentary that I can't wait for the world to see. It is called Deliver Us. And what an amazing title, right? And it depicts this story and this issue through the lens of a Black midwife. And the power, the difference that you guys are making in communities all over this country. And as the co-founder and co-owner of the only birthing center that is led by Black women in LA, which is kind of crazy given how diverse this place is, you're changing and saving lives right here, and other Black midwives all around the country are doing the same. So talk to us about how important it is to hear about this issue from the perspective of a Black midwife.
Elaine is so good at this question asking and all the things. I mean, it's amazing.
Have you ever seen me with like clothes on, like good, like a good outfit?
Like that on social media, yeah, but real life. I'm like, it's so refreshing. I'm like, we have on the same sweatpants and sweatshirt.
Don't put me on blast.
I like it. That's a big question. How does it? Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Bobbie. Thank you to Bobbie, and thank you to Elaine, and thank you to Charles. You're my inspiration.
Listen, this is Mutual Inspiration Society. I adore you.
And thank you to my business partner, Allegra, who's supposed to be here today, but guess what? Her kids are sick. Her kids are sick, so she's momming, right? Because we do that too.
She has 6 of them.
I have 6. Allegra has 2, but that said, I think one of my kids is supposed to be here, so she's running late because. Wait, where?
She's right here in the front. She's here in the front.
Hey, girl! How you sneak in? I didn't see you. Hi, baby. Stand up. Everybody see my daughter. Yeah.
Show off your work. Yeah, show you.
This is my oldest baby. Stand up, girl. She fabulous. 4 children this woman has. 4, including a set of twins. She got a 2-for-1 deal. I love you. So what am I talking about again?
Documentary.
The documentary. Hey, Deliver Us, doc. The filmmakers are here, or at least I know. Where are you, Jenny Callahan?
They're probably
all the way in the back. There's Jenny. It's funny because Jenny and Randy, who are doing the documentary, they were my clients. Really? But they didn't know when they decided to do this documentary that she and Randy had me in common. I had helped Jenny with her daughter with lactation shortly after she had her baby, came to her house. And Randy, I was her doula. I was still a licensed student midwife, and I was her doula. She was one of my last doula clients that I took before I became licensed. And they found each other not because of me. And that's a whole nother story. So what is really amazing in this work is just, in all the work, but just the alignment. Like for me, I follow the alignment, right? Yeah. And to me, that's spirit talking, that's God talking, that's our ancestors guiding us, right? And I listen to that. I listen to it. I've probably been listening to it my whole life. I always knew I wanted to have a midwife one day when I had kids, and I kind of had to unpack how I got that idea, but it was really from like sitting at my grandmother's house in New Jersey, where my mom lives now, and the house my grandparents built, and reading Life magazine, and I saw the story on a Black midwife named Maud Collin. Do y'all know who that is? Yes. And if you don't, just look her up, Maud Collin. And there was a beautiful Life magazine, like photojournalist kind of story on her and the work she was doing as a Black midwife in the South. And what a lot of people don't know now is that Black midwives kind of delivered the country. Yes. They delivered the United States, okay? They were targeted. Clap, clap, clap. Yes. Woo-hoo. And they were targeted even as midwives were targeted to bring over as enslaved folks because they knew how to midwife. And if you think about what was the labor force? Bodies. So Black midwives were important to help enslaved folks deliver as many babies as possible so that this country could get built on the backs of slave labor. And then when that wasn't ideal anymore because slavery had ended and we don't want a whole bunch of Black babies running around anymore because they're free, midwifery was also systematically erased. So we were good enough to bring 12 and 13 babies in from one human because women were having lots of babies. They were bred. We were good enough to bring in those babies, but then when we didn't want that many babies anymore, we got wiped out systemically, like I said, and the OBGYN profession was created. It had began to be created on the backs of enslaved women, as we know about Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy, thank you. We know that those 3 enslaved women were used for medical experimentation with no anesthesia to develop the tools of modern obstetrics that we use today. Remember, because Black people couldn't feel pain. So all that to say, I'm just a kid, I'm in Jersey, I'm at my grandparents' house, it's boring, I'm reading Life magazine, Ebony and Jet. And Life magazine had this retrospective of this beautiful woman, and I was like, oh, I want a midwife. And like, it just was like in my psyche that that's what I would choose for my children's births, and I did. And so unbeknownst to me was Black maternal mortality, because it's been going on for a long time, y'all. This is not new. This is not something that just started. Fast forward to, I'm not sure what year, maybe my mom will remember, but I remember I was living in Virginia at the time with my family, and I got a phone call from my mom, my godmother, Elaine. And
alignment.
Yes, exactly. And my auntie, Anne. And they were calling because I knew my cousin Leslie was pregnant, and they were calling me, and I was like, I got on the phone, and I'm like, oh my God, Aunt Anne, aren't you excited? You have your first grandbaby, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was my mom, my Auntie Elaine, and my Aunt Anne on the phone, and they just kind of paused. And I'm like, they're not saying anything. And then my Aunt Anne says, or my Auntie Elaine says, Kim, well, we're calling to tell you that Leslie didn't make it. So my cousin, Leslie, gave birth to her child, and then in her postpartum, she started having shortness of breath. She was already home. And she kept calling her providers. Leslie, I know you wanted to put this story on my heart because it came to me today, so thank you, Leslie, and we speak your name, Leslie Marshall. She was having shortness of breath, and she kept calling her providers and calling them, and they were like, oh, you probably have the flu, oh, you probably have this, oh, you probably have that, take some Tylenol, da-da-da-da-da, and she died. She had suffered from a postpartum cardiomyopathy. And so it seemed like an isolated incident, you know, like I really wasn't tuned in to what was happening around the country, and I think a lot of people weren't. And around 2010, hi, Randy. Around 2010, Amnesty International actually put out a report about Black maternal health and the crisis and that we are in. No one else was speaking about it. And at the time, I was working with midwives. I wasn't yet a midwife. I was doing lactation, and I was working with midwives at a birth center that has since closed in Los Angeles. And it was like, how are people dying? Like, nobody was dying in our care. People were having wonderful experiences. There was people, I mean, not everyone chooses a midwife and has a low risk, intervention-free birth. I mean, that's not it. it's when if folks need higher levels of care or they become high risk, then we help them to get to the best people possible in our community that can support them. They're not trying to randomly find somebody to help them out. Like it's like we're helping them do all the things, no matter what it looks like. And we were not having any of those experiences. And so when I read that report, I was like, seems odd to me. And lo and behold, as time has gone on and as we've had, unfortunately, it's like the blessing and the curse of social media, but the blessing that we're getting these stories out in a way and in a space and in a time where everybody can be tuned into what's happening. And I think that kind of galvanize and allow more people to know what's been going on for a very long time. Because if you think like mothers giving birth, first of all, Black folks wasn't allowed in the hospital to give birth. For up until, probably 50s, 60s, 70s. And midwifery, right, historians? So midwifery also didn't die out until, I should say it wasn't erased completely until the 70s. I'm talking about Black midwifery in particular. And so, all the things that come with that, like, when you feel like you can't go to the hospital, it's like something's being kept from you. And then when somebody says, okay, you can come to our hospital now, then a lot of us are like, great, I can get, I can do what everybody else is doing. I want to go to that hospital, that shiny place over there, like maybe even putting down our traditional ways of coming into being. But at the end of the day, here we are, 2023. And I think what I'm seeing, and I hope this answers your question, I don't think it does, but what I'm seeing is just this call to action. I love what you said, this maternal health revolution is happening, and it's happening in real time, and it's like the pace is picking up. And I pray that we can end this crisis in our lifetime. I really do. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do it, because we just have so much work to do just systemically. These institutions, we're all here talking. We're almost preaching to the choir in this crowd. Like the folks that need to hear it are not on our page. And we have to figure out a way to talk to the people that really need to hear these things. We have to speak truth to power all day, every day, in the dark places, in the caves, in where people are hiding out, trying to act like this is not happening. So we have our work cut out for us, period.
I think part of that work is changing the culture, which starts with changing the narrative. And what we know, because now we do have data about this, is that 80% of maternal and infant deaths can actually be prevented with midwifery care. And it's something I did not know, had never heard of until I was hella pregnant. And I'm like, how come we never hear? Why don't we hear enough about the benefits of midwifery care? And I think there's a lot of historical context for why that is. But for those who do know about it, and even for me, I'm going to call myself out here. As I started to learn about the benefits of midwifery care, the life-saving benefits, something in me still felt like, yeah, but I'm going to catch her on the second one. The first one, just play it safe.
Play it safe.
You guys, play it safe. When the stats are telling me I have a higher chance of dying in childbirth in the hospital than I do in midwifery care. But something about the stigma and the conditioning runs so deep.
It's definitely conditioning. Because you think about this. How many people have heard, trust your doctor? Raise your hand.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's in our psyche. We have been conditioned to believe things of that nature. And so it's almost like cognitive dissonance when somebody says to you, well, you can have a midwife and do this. And you're like, what is that? Right? And that's on purpose.
What type of witchery?
Yeah, right.
Black
Midwifery?
magic?
Midwifery?
Yeah.
You know, so, but that's really on purpose, right? Because if you don't know, you don't know. And then the folks that have designed this healthcare system as we know it can stay in power because we're ignorant to all the benefits and all the things. And also the whole infrastructure, I mean, it's just so different. Like, and midwifery hadn't been allowed to kind of like evolve with the times because midwives were systematically wiped out on purpose. When I go visit my friend in Virginia, she's an elder, she's in her 80s, and her husband, and they're Virginia natives, so they were born and raised there, and their grandparents are from there. And you know, on my friend, her name is Sheila Coates, and on one of her walls in her house, she has the retirement certificate of her grandmother, who was a midwife, and she has it framed on the wall, and she's like, you know, this was very special to us when my grandmother got this certificate because that meant that she could retire. She had worked so hard and da-da-da-da-da, but what she didn't realize is that she was forced to retire. Her grandmother was forced to retire because that's how they wiped out the midwives. They said, you've had 3,000 births, you're 70, 80 years old, you're still practicing, but can you read? So can you pass this new exam we just developed? Oh, well, sorry. You can't be a midwife anymore, and the state is coming in, and we're retiring you, and that's how. So all that knowledge, all of that, wisdom, we don't get a chance to share in that, right? And they just were forced to go away. So I guess at the end of the day, in terms of like having hope, is that and some ancestral call. There is a call. I do think it's deeply ancestral. That is calling those of us who are being called to this work of midwifery or birth work, doula, all the things. We're being called, and we are coming back in greater numbers. We are reclaiming this tradition. This is part of our culture. We're reclaiming it, and it's happening. So that gives me great hope as I see folks younger than me, folks older than me that are studying. They're like, social media. Everyone's like, hey, I'm out here in these midwife streets. Can you send me $5 because I'm broke? I'm trying to be a midwife. And it's beautiful.
So that part. I think we have to have a really candid conversation about how resources associated with midwifery and doula care have also been systematically, dismantled. And so when we talk about this too, one of the things from my perspective is I spend a lot of time, like I'm unapologetic. Anytime I get a chance to be in a room, I'm kicking it down and I'm saying doulas, midwives, etc. So now that America realizes that it has this real problem on its hands, everybody's like, oh, where are the midwives? Where are the midwives? Where are the doulas, right? Everybody's saying doula care. But at the end of the day, doulas and midwives cannot be solely responsible for fixing something that has been systematically preying upon people for centuries, right? Particularly if they are under-resourced.
Yes.
Right? And so it's not just enough to support and advocate for access to doula care, but don't just pay doulas a surviving wage. Don't just pay midwives a surviving wage. Pay them a thriving wage, right? So we have to talk about that. We have to be real about what this means, and that means making sure that people have plans where doula care is reimbursable.
Yes.
They have access, that they are being trained, and even the other thing that I think that isn't focused on is one of the reasons that there is only one of your centers here in LA is how difficult is it? How much bootstrapping did it take, right? How difficult is it to go to a bank and get finance for a birth center? You understand what I'm saying? All these things are intentional, and these are things, so we have to address every aspect of the systematic obstruction of doula and midwifery care.
That part. And what's interesting is, as Elaine has chosen this as her platform, what I think, and I hope it's okay for me to say this, Elaine, but like when she's reaching out to say, hey, I'd like to tell this story, the people that say no, the organizations and the institutions that say, no, we can't do this story. Mm-hmm. Why? But to your point, And I'm just gonna look. There was no bank that we went to get money, okay, to raise money and alignment, right? You know, when we, as I was finishing up my schooling, I had finished my schooling in 2019, December 2019, actually, like the last day of December, I graduated from midwifery school. Then my next step was to get licensed, which that's a whole nother financial burden. And then, so that was December. And then shortly after, you know what happened then, right? 2020, we had a pandemic. So I was happy because I'm like, I got to study. I ain't going nowhere. We got to stay in the house. Perfect. I won't be distracted. I'm going to pass this test. And, but as time went on, we had already opened Kindred Space in 2017, and we had a smaller space. I think part of the video you'll see, like, that's our smaller space that we started out with before we had a birth center. And then March 10th, 2020, when we all knew that COVID was real, and we realized that we couldn't meet in groups again, like we're meeting today, we made the decision. We had already decided that we were going to be looking for birth center space, but I needed to be licensed first. And so we had been looking, and then March 10th, 2020 happened. We realized we had to close our doors, right? We had to close our doors as is. And literally that same day, maybe the next day, Allegra, who was the only licensed midwife on the team between her and I at that time, was receiving like probably 20 phone calls a day. People saying, I'm pregnant and I don't want to go to the hospital. I'm almost ready to deliver, and I just don't want to go to the hospital. There's COVID, it's scary, all the things. And so she felt so compelled to try to take care of all these people. And I'm on the other side saying, well, we can't take care of all these people, number one. We don't have a space. Number two, a lot of these people aren't prepared for out-of-hospital birth. And that's a whole nother thing. But this does show you that we have to fast track what we're doing to open a space because people need a safe space to give birth. And I was called to create a fundraiser on GoFundMe. Spirit just be telling me to do stuff and I just do it. And it was like, make a fundraiser. I'm like, oh man, begging for money again? Okay. Okay, God, jeez,
2020 was a good time to do it, though.
I know, but I mean, still, it was just, it just, so finally, Spirit was just, God was on me like, post the fundraiser, post the fundraiser on Mother's Day. Okay, God, I'll do it. So I post the fundraiser, and I'm just like, push it, and I'm just like, I'm never gonna look. And probably that first month, we got about $4,000, and I was so happy. I'm like, yay, it's gonna happen. And what day did George Floyd get killed?
May 30th.
Wow, y'all remember that. That's when George Floyd was murdered. Y'all remember what that was like, right? And suddenly, Allegra said to me, I don't feel comfortable posting this fundraiser with everything that's going on in the country right now. And I'm like, but girl, it's the same stuff. Police brutality, police murders, maternal mortality, lack of access to care. It's all the same issue. But okay, I get it. I'm not gonna post it. I'm just gonna leave it up there. I'm not gonna repost it. Fine. Didn't matter. Everyone who was activated by George's murder was connecting in with our program, connecting with our campaign, sharing our campaign. And I think that weekend we raised $15,000. So we're very, very grateful for all of our donors and all the people that had this incredible call to action. And by July, we had enough money to put down on a lease for a space. So July 2020, here the time trajectory. March, we closed our old space. By July, we had found a new space, which, by the way, was a 3-minute walking distance from my house where I was currently living.
Alignment.
So we got our new space. We got the space. We opened up. We're just like, hopefully people are going to keep giving us money. And they did. And we kept getting money, and we had people calling us that wanted to give larger amounts and didn't want to go through GoFundMe, and so that was wonderful, and I'm so grateful for every one of those donors, so grateful. But I will tell you, the majority of people that donated, like thousands of people donated like $10 and $20, y'all. So don't ever think like a small donation can't make an impact, because all those donations came together and allowed us to open Kindred Space, allowed us to furnish Kindred Space, allowed us to build out Kindred Space, allowed us to furnish it, allowed us to build a garden that we planted vegetables that we would give to our clients. It just allowed us to build out on the vision. All that to say, as we come here to 2023, I was talking to my dear friend Ariel, who came by the space last week. She's a PhD and she's all the things, right? Like, she's becoming a doctor. She's becoming a doctor of public health as well. And so I was saying to her, girl, like, we're here, we're doing it. We've served hundreds of families now. So many babies have been born within these walls. So many babies have been born at their homes. Elaine didn't come to our birth center. She got her home birth. But where's the money? We're back to it has very much slowed down. And Ariel said, yeah, I wondered about that, because the money that people gave up was reactionary. And I already had entombed, probably somewhere in last year, as I see my other sister friends and midwives and people building birth centers all over, Black folks trying their hardest to build birth centers all over the United States. I was like, we actually have to go for the millions, because the system is not, it's not designed to do the work that we're doing. And just last thing I'll say is that I'm on many, many committees, right? One is the Maternal Mortality Review Board of California. Let me tell you, when my dear friend, Dr. Saida Pepra, who has an organization called Frontline Doulas, who's amazing, invited me to sit on this Maternal Mortality Review Board. One is that she needed somebody else to cry with after we would get off the 4-hour meetings reviewing these cases. And two, because they needed more representation and wanted more representation from midwives and out-of-hospital providers and things of that nature. So I sat on this review board with her, and the first review board, I got off the phone and I literally was in a fetal position on my bed, just traumatized by what I was hearing was happening, by the huge amount of preventable deaths, as you were speaking about. I really was not good for a couple of days. I was not good at all. And thankfully I could call Saida, and I was like, girl, is this what happens every time? Are we gonna be okay? But at the end of the day, I know that I am a voice for these people that died, that no longer have a voice. And for that, I will keep going, and I'm still on the review board. I'm a little tougher now. I can get through it a little bit better, but I'm their voice because they don't have one anymore. I'm on a committee that's helping to reform Medi-Cal, how Medi-Cal can pay for midwives. And they are now currently, as of January 1st, paying for doulas, y'all. And a lot of that is from people that are in this room, like Adjua and Nakisha Robinson, who work with the Department of Health and have advocated for this to happen. And so now doulas can get paid by Medi-Cal, so families can have a doula and they don't have to come out of pocket, because the people, who will go without are the people who don't have extra money to pay out of pocket, right? So that is phenomenal. But at the end of the day, we have to reform the whole Medi-Cal system, and actually all of insurance. And I had spoken about this on Paula's panel, that insurance companies it's like, I want to say, it's like fraud is being committed. And we have to hold them accountable, because of one of these committees I was on, and I sent this white paper to Elaine, and I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but I was shocked to read that, I can't remember who pulled together this white paper, but it's hundreds of pages long, and they've kind of picked apart the maternal health system in the United States. And everything you think is true, everything wrong that you think is probably going on is actually going on. So for instance, hospitals are incentivized, they get more money from insurance company the more high level things that you use. So if you have C-sections, which is going to lead to a higher level of NICU stays for babies, right?
Perverse incentives.
Right? They're going to get more money from insurance. And so low risk births that you need anything, don't need drugs, the mom just comes in and has a baby, they are not incentivized because they take up the staff time, they take up the hospital, the rent of the hospital or whatever, but you didn't use anything. So you can't charge for anything. So hospitals are incentivized to just have more high-risk things going on and also creating high-risk situations. So in a way, it's like you're getting patted on the back when you have the worst outcomes. We have to dismantle that. It's not just about me and Allegra or all these other birth workers out here trying to change the system. It's like we got to go to the root, and insurance is a huge problem. So as we start to, break apart and like demand that Medi-Cal change how they pay us and change the way that they pay all providers. For one last thing, for instance, a provider, OB, is paid, and a midwife actually get paid pretty much the same thing for Medi-Cal, believe it or not. So every prenatal visit, how much you think Medi-Cal is going to reimburse us? Like about $20 for a prenatal visit. Am I wrong? And then, so how do you make money? So if we open the center with every intention of accepting Medi-Cal so we can serve, but it's like when you do the math, it doesn't add up. Because in order for me to make money, or order for us to make money as a center taking Medi-Cal, we probably have to see 60 clients a day. And that's what's happening. And that's what's happening in our systems currently. And that's why people are not getting good care. It's not because every doctor is a bad person. That's not true.
Right.
There's so many amazing people out here that want to do the right thing, but the system constrains them. The system ties their hands.
Right.
So we're all tied up by this system. We're slaves to it. And so because we have, we take 20 people a month at the most. We get to have hour-long appointments. We get to know the deep history. We get to be like, wow, that's a lot going on. There's a lot of stress. There's all the things. Let's refer you to our mental health person. Let's refer you to our acupuncturist who's here in the audience. Our nonprofit takes care of a lot of those expenses for people because they can't afford it, but they need it. And it ain't out there. They can't get it. So we're in the business of helping people thrive. And so when people give us money, we just turn it back over to our clientele. And so all that to say, there's ways to donate today, and we hope that you do, because we need to keep going. All this is great, but we can still close our doors this month.
Pass the tray.
This man, right, this man needs money so he can keep going, so he can keep traveling, so he can have childcare, so he can have all the things, because every time he goes to do his advocacy work, he's leaving something behind. He's leaving his children at home. He's leaving his work. He's not doing this to make money. So when you think about advocacy, when you think about donating, I want you to know that this money actually is making a huge difference. And it's really about what we can do to make change. And even if you can't march with us, or even if you're not trying to have a baby, or whatever the case may be, if you have a way to donate, or you know someone who might be interested in our causes, then please send them our way.
Whew. Literally pass the tray. I'm ready. Kim, I'm really glad that you brought up the point about not all doctors being the devil, right? Like, there is so much divisiveness around this issue that is not helping us make any progress. You have the anti-midwifery clan, and then you got the anti-hospital clan, and what we know is we need to be working together.
Absolutely.
To make systematic changes that are going to benefit both the birthing community and birth workers of all kinds, inside the hospital system and outside of the hospital system. So I want you to share your vision of what a truly integrated, truly supportive birthing ecosystem looks like, that embraces both doctors, like Dr. Shavira. Shout out
Dr.
to Dr. Shavira,
Shavira.
one of the good ones. One of the good ones in the room. You guys need to give him a bigger round of applause.
Big round of applause.
Because this man, you don't know what he's up against.
Look at him, look at him. Just follow him on Facebook, Milo Shavira.
Who also, by the way, I'll tell you, I met with 8 different doctors, and I can't tell you how awful those experiences were. And I'm so grateful that Kim introduced me to Dr. Shavira, who's the last doctor I met with, and the only one who said, I will see you and Kim concurrently. You can get your prenatal care from her and I, and you can birth wherever you want to. And you don't have to tell me right now what your decision is. It's your choice, it's your birth. And I burst out in tears. Wow. And the fact that that is rare is a problem, but we need to lift up those who are doing the good work in a bad system. Yes. So thank you, Dr. Shavira, for being here. Thank you for what you do every single day. But back to my question, my loaded question. How can we all work together for the benefit of birthing people and mothers? And babies.
Right. So that's a great question. I mean, a lot of times we look to Europe, because Europe has very integrated midwifery care. Like most people will see midwives unless they need to see a doctor. And so I think that's one idea. And I think that, but we're not Europe, right? So we can create what we want for ourselves. Sarah Shealy is here. She's a CNM midwife and a teacher. I know I called you out, girl. Raise your hand. And I mean, I think that we should be open to hearing ideas from our community, all of our communities, about what it should look like, right? Mm-hmm. We shouldn't continue to allow the system itself to just kind of like dictate how it's going to be, because that's how it is. It's like you get an insurance and you look on your insurance card and it tells you who you can see and who you can't see. That's crap. Because I know for Dr. Shavira, we love him so much. I can text him and say, hey, I have somebody that needs to see you. And if it's somebody who can't necessarily pay out of pocket maybe or whatever, they have to go through insurance. But now their insurance don't cover him. Mm-hmm. So we try to get what's called a pre-authorization. And that may take days. I've had that happen with clients who have had, what would you say, like crisis situations where they need to be seen right away. But insurance is like, well, we'll call you back maybe Monday or Tuesday and let you know if you're allowed to see this person. Seriously. And then we'll call you back and say, well, no, you can't see him. I'm sorry. You have to actually go to the doctor that's on your insurance, and they're an hour away from you, but that's the only one that we'll cover. And that's a real situation that I've been in. And those are the things that tie these providers' hands. Like they can't serve as many people as they would like to serve. So again, back to insurance and back to like, we have to kind of like dismantle this system. Some people say burn it down. I can be of the burn it down camp sometimes, but at the end of the day, we have to dismantle it, and we need to all have a say in what we want it to look like going forward. And I know that there's people with probably better ideas than me, but we have to have free choice in healthcare. Like, you should be able to go whoever you want to see, and that is covered. And it should not be, what Elaine went through with just like kind of like trying out all these different people and just being dissatisfied. And literally, I feel like Elaine was in a place where she was just almost frozen. Like she was just frozen. She knew it didn't feel right. She couldn't move forward. So she was just a pregnant woman not receiving any care because she just really didn't, she had no good options at the time. And it caused her to freeze. And we're talking about Elaine Welteroth, okay? What about our folks from the hood? What about our folks in these communities? What about our folks that don't even speak English? Wow. What about, you said it's more than Black maternal mortality. It's this system for everybody. I just want to, I remember when my cousin died, there was a white midwife that's pretty famous who had already created a quilt for mothers who had died. And it wasn't specifically Black women. It was women who had died because something surrounding childbirth or postpartum. And what she pointed out was there was women who were dying in the postpartum, but like they're dying from something that happened in their childbirth 20 years later. From, so she created this quilt, a Safe Motherhood Initiative, a Safe Motherhood quilt. And I remember contacting her about my cousin Leslie, and she asked us to send a beautiful, they make a quilt square for the moms, for each mom, with their birth date and their death date. Is Kara on there? Yeah. And so my cousin's on there too. And they had volunteer folks the volunteers knew that she was a Black woman, so they found this beautiful African print fabric to make her quilt square. I got permission from her family, and it is on the quilt with Kira. Yeah. So this has been going on for a long time, guys.
You keep teeing me up to my next question. Our alignment is just... Charles, I want to talk to you about one under-discussed repercussion of this crisis, which affects every family that loses a birthing person in labor or in delivery or afterwards, which is how to feed the baby. It leaves so many families scrambling for donor milk, figuring out what formula to use. We're living in the midst of a formula crisis. So the options have been scarce for so many birthing people. So I want to ask you, how did you navigate that? How did you approach feeding your baby after Kira's death?
Yeah, that's a question I've never been asked, and I can't think of a better place to be asked that. So when everything happened, that was one of the huge questions, right? Kira was a breastfeeding, she was all about breastfeeding. She planned to breastfeed. She breastfed Charles until well past he was a year. The only reason she stopped breastfeeding Charles is because she was preparing for Langston, right? And completely planned to breastfeed him with the same journey. And so when I was hit with everything and my world was turned upside down, and somebody came in from the breast milk bank, and I had friends from high school that had surpluses of milk that they were willing to donate, and I had these options with formula, and I was just confused and overwhelmed. And ultimately, I made the decision to formula feed Langston. And it was tough. And I think that not only is that something that I face, but that is something that, as you said, every single one of these families is up against, in addition to so much more. I think that one of my greatest assets as an advocate is the fact that I'm a delusional optimist, right? That I think one of the reasons I was able to get some of this stuff done is because I didn't know any better, right? I didn't know that this stuff was supposed to be hard. I just figured I'd just, make a bunch of noise. And I think that we have an opportunity to step up and bring our gifts, bring our resources to the table in meaningful ways, like I said, so that we will be talking about this in the historical context. And so for me, I've begun to state boldly, and I know that you expressed uncertainty, but I'm here to say that not only we're going to fix this, but we're going to fix this in 3 to 5 years, right? And I'm going to continue to say that. I'm going to continue to take that opportunity every time I can, because the good news is, as we've heard these horrifying stories, but the good news is we can fix it, right? It's just going to take accountability and making sure that the people that we spend our money with, the people that we send to elected office, right, are willing to prioritize this and making it clear to them, if they don't, we'll find somebody else that wants the job, right? It's just that simple.
Boom. Thank you. One thing I want to just underline from what
I know that was a long answer, y'all, but I'm sorry.
Take up your space, okay? I want you guys to know that Charles's organization, Kira for Moms, is partnering with Bobbie for Change to start a new program that's called the Maternal Mortality Family Response Team that is going to be providing a full year of support via grief counseling, diapers, formula, food, and other essentials to care for and nourish babies and families who experience the tragedy of maternal loss through childbirth. And Bobbie is supporting and building this initiative to provide organic infant formula, the best on the market. Well, I can say it. Who gonna check me, boo? And I just want to acknowledge that it is going to take a concerted effort between all entities here. So grassroots organizers, midwives and doulas, community birth workers, people like me and you telling our stories, but also brands and companies in the parenting space to step up and put their money where their customers' interests lie. And I just want to really acknowledge you guys, Bobbie. The women warriors that work for Bobbie, y'all, they are some real ones.
Yes,
and I've never been prouder to partner with anybody. And this is not this is real. I became an investor. I'm a partner with you guys, and I've never felt more proud about any work I've done with any company. So I really am so proud of you and the work that all of you guys are doing together. I'm just proud to elevate it and make sure my community is aware of it so that we can all support. And because everyone in this room, you mentioned, we're preaching to the choir here. But the point is, these are the foot soldiers.
Yep.
So we gotta equip this community with the talking points, the tools, the QR codes, so that we can make this movement continue to move, keep Kindred open, keep For Cure for Moms doing what it needs to be doing so we can eradicate this issue. So before I turn it over to you all for a Q&A, and I really do want you guys to feel welcomed and comfortable raising your hand and asking any question. There's no question there's no silly questions. But before we turn it over, so start thinking now about what you're gonna ask. And before I do, Charles, I would love for you to give everyone in here, all these foot soldiers in here, one marching order, one thing that we can do.
All right, cool. So share the good news, right? Tell these stories, but the direct practical thing that I've asked for you all, we talk about wins, we talk about what's on the horizon, from a legislative standpoint. So the big thing that we're working on right now is something called the Momnibus. Who knows about the federal Momnibus? Ooh, I love it. Now, how many of y'all have signed the petition in support of the Momnibus? I love it. So the federal Momnibus, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a comprehensive package of federal legislation made up of 13 different pieces of legislation, all addressing the various aspects of the maternal health crisis. It is going to constitute an unprecedented $3 billion federal investment in these in Black maternal health care. What does that mean? That means that places like Kindred, who have traditionally not had access to federal funding, are going to have access, right? It means that we're going to be able to protect incarcerated moms. It means that we're going to address social determinants of change. It means that we are going to have better oversight and accountability for providers. It's going to make sure that every single hospital in this country that catches babies is required to have implicit bias and cultural sensitivity training. Right? And so much more. And you can read about that, but I would please encourage you all to go to For Cure for Moms or the Black Maternal Health Caucus and just take 30 seconds, sign the petition. All you have to do is put in your last name and your zip code, and we will automatically send a letter to both of your U.S. senators as well as your local congressperson. As I said in the video, not asking, but demanding that they support this legislation. So that would be my quick takeaway.
Boom. All right, you guys, Q&A time. Who's the brave soul that's going to step up first?
I hope that more men step up in the way that you have, because you're not, you're not sort of, like you said, shying away from, but you're speaking for other mothers, and that's just incredible. And hearing more about your center, is there apart from financially, are there things that people can donate to your center? Like, I know that I have a huge community of mom friends that once they think they're done having, children, there's like an abundance of whether it's pumps and bassinets and all that stuff. Is that something that is useful for your center? And the third thing, sorry, I have a lot. And this is more like a personal question, but is part of what you're saying of like incentivizing hospitals, would you say that inducing is now part of that? Because I feel like both of
Yes.
my births were pushed for inducing, and my recent one was really crazy, and there was 20 doctors that came in because it was that strange of a birth. Thank you. It was just a crazy random birth. They brought in, I want to say, maybe 20 extra doctors to watch, to learn about the process and whatever, and everyone was saying, C-section, and I love my doctor so much. I had the opposite experience, luckily, and she was like, I know this person, and she can do this, and we did it. But all of these things are kind of like adding up, I guess, and I was just curious about what you thought about inducing, because I know that that's kind of what's being put forward as promoting as lower risk, which is the opposite of what you're saying, but I'm guessing that maybe you know something about that.
Wow, put me on the spot.
Sorry.
But I would say yes as a short answer, and I have Dr. Shavira back there, and I know he would have something to say about that, and my other public health folks, but there is a study that was done called the ARRIVE trial that basically attempts to show and does in some way show that it's safer for every pregnant woman to be induced at 39 weeks. It supposedly produces better outcomes, but the study to me is suspect. Personally, it's suspect. It needs to be unpacked. It's not perfect, but that is what's used in this current culture to have everybody be induced. So just thinking about that, does it really sound right? No. That everybody should be induced at 39 weeks? Like, who is this truly serving, right? I'm gonna tell you as a midwife, like one of the hardest things about my job is that I don't know when your baby's gonna get born. And it probably is gonna happen at 2 o'clock in the morning when I would like to be sleeping, but I signed up for this, so when you call me at 11 or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., babies normally come, like majority, in the middle of the night. And so if I could control that, or if I had a desire to control that so I could sleep at night, then maybe I would try to induce you, right? But because I am respecting and honoring the physiologic process of birth, and that is what I signed up for, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to push you to give you things to make you birth on my schedule. I am respecting this human body, the wisdom of it, the wisdom of the physiology, and I am going to support that, right? And so what ways, I think the question is, what ways does the system create things to control the people that are using the system for their benefit? I think that's the big question, because a lot of this is about control. A lot of this is about, like, for instance, think about this, like doulas are on the rise, right? More and more doulas, it's wonderful. And one of the biggest techniques that doulas use is when a person goes into labor, going to their home, even wherever they're birthing, hospital, home, birthing center, but the doula is like the first to arrive because they get to support that person in their early labor at home. And one of the benefits is that they can keep you home longer because they're kind of hanging out with you, massaging you, doing all the things that doulas, magical things that doulas do to keep you safe and to keep you supported so your body can progress naturally and normally. And then as you get closer to birthing your baby, they help get you to your place of birth, right? But now, if everybody's being induced at 39 weeks, which basically means I'm not in labor, but my doctor told me to come on January 19th at 8 a.m. and start the process, then you're basically coming in, not in labor, and you're getting drugs, different types of drugs, different types of agents to make your body go into labor. And if it works, you might have a baby come out your vagina. But if it doesn't work, you're definitely getting a C-section. And so do we have higher interventions, I like to think, yes. I mean, sometimes it works great. Like, we give the drugs, the baby comes out, and it's fine. But that isn't the story for everybody. And also, like, where's the doula in this now? So it's like all the kind of ways that we've tried to help people have less interventive births by using doulas now, because of this induction situation, it's taken one of our tools away as birth workers, and we're kind of at the mercy of this system. And so I hope that answers your question, but I do think that's a part of the problem right now.
Could I just add something to that real quick? I think that this speaks also directly to one of the overlying problems, or the overlying problem with American medicine, is it is profits over patients.
100%.
Right? And so if we look at the cesarean rate in the United States over the past 50 years on a graph, right? It goes directly like this, okay? If we look at the maternal mortality rate, it almost mirrors it exactly. Now, are cesareans directly responsible for every maternal loss? No. However, we have to also look at the fact that interventions oftentimes are a perverse incentive, because every intervention, every dose of Pitocin, every shot, every cesarean is a line item on your bill. Oh, yes. Right? And so to what she was saying earlier, oftentimes the reality situations with cesarean or an induction, you can charge somebody 5 times as much and get them in and out in a fraction of the time.
That part.
Right? And so it really comes back to the perverse incentives, and we have to, so from a solution standpoint, because we're talking about being solution oriented. So
Don't
what does
depress
that
my
look like?
people. We're not
Right.
leaving depressed.
Exactly. So what does that look like from an action standpoint? What things can we do? So for me, when I sit down and I go and I have meetings with companies, when I have meetings with stakeholders, when I go to large employers, if you tell me that mothers and babies matter to you, I'm going to make you prove it. So how can you prove it? What you're going to do, if you're really about that life, what you're going to do is, I need you to restructure your benefits packages. And I need you to restructure your benefits packages where you offer a flat fee for maternal care, so that the care providers are not incentivized to run up the meter, right? And then let's do a evidence-based study on those outcomes versus your regular plan, right? Let me show you what the magic of a human body can do in direct correlation with that. So those are ways that we can do this. That means also making sure that we are stripping away those incentives, and we're also rooting the way that we train a new generation of obstetricians, of midwives, in cultural, competent, compassionate care, while also making sure that people who have good intentions have systems that support and incentivize those good intentions, right? So that's how we lean into these solutions, while not just simply admiring the problem, right?
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful answer.
I'm sorry?
Oh, yeah.
We have, you can you reach out to me at, like on Instagram, Kindred Space LA. We have a lot of people that donate a lot of stuff to us, and it's kind of like, it gets to be a lot, and we don't really, like a lot. So, but sometimes it's great. So just contact me privately, and then I can put you in touch with our admin person, and she handles that kind of stuff. But thank you.
We probably have time for 1 to 2 more questions, depending.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Lindsay introduced us.
Lindsay is responsible for introducing me to Kim, and this is after meeting one random night in New York.
Wow.
One random night, yes. It was
And you texted me out of the blue. I don't know if it's because you saw my cries for help on Instagram or if the spirit just led you, but I want to acknowledge you because I haven't seen you and I haven't spoken to you since Kimberly changed my life, and she changed my life because of you. So thank you.
Dang. Well, thought I wasn't going to cry today, but here we are. Yes, I did see your cries for help on Instagram. I also knew the minute I found out you were pregnant, I actually knew that I needed you to meet Kim and be a part of this community the minute I found out you were pregnant. And so we had met one time, fun night in New York City at Soho House. Shout out to our mutual friend. And I knew, and I said to you a minute ago, I said, Kimberly, and I'll say this to you publicly, you know how I feel about you, but this woman saved my life. Her daughter, Yanni, has saved my life a few times too. And this community saved my life. And it was before I even had my daughter. I was 33 weeks pregnant when I became a Kindred Space mama. And what I experienced myself in the medical system led me, and my doula through my birthing process led me to Kim. I actually reached out to Kim to be my doula, but she's Kim and she's so busy. She couldn't get back to me right away, but Spirit still led me to her because she didn't get back to me, and I went with a different doula. And then my doula, as soon as I had my baby, said, you need to go to Kindred. Or actually before I had maybe, you need to go to Kindred, you need to meet Kim. She became my lactation consultant. Anyway, the mamas in that Kindred Space saved my life through this incredible being. And I told you a few minutes ago, I said I knew that I needed you to be covered by our ancestors, and she does our ancestors' work. And I knew that I didn't want you to experience what I experienced. And the way in which you have chosen for this to be your platform and the work that you're doing is something that I dreamed about when I was going through my stuff. And I remember saying, and I was so angry, and I was like, there's got to be something I can do. And I have this little platform. It's a lot bigger now, based on before I had my daughter. But then I was like, but my voice isn't necessarily big enough. And so I applaud you for having the courage to do this and to stand in your truth and in protection of your baby and all of our babies and all of us. And I'm just so proud of you. And I'm so happy you two met. You have no idea. It just makes me so happy. And Charles, you're doing incredible work. And I want to just commend you for the way in which your hardest test in life has become your testimony, because your testimony is saving us. And that means more to us than you'll ever know. And my question is, Kimberly, I'm going to ask this, but because you are all fighting for us in so many ways, I want to know how you are taking care of yourself. Because you in particular, there was a moment in my life where I really didn't think I was gonna make it. And this woman showed up outside my door and she was like, you get your butt out of this house, you get in this car, we're going for a drive, and everything's gonna be okay. And I was like, whatever Kimberly says, I just do it. But because she pours so much into so many of us, I wanna know, one, how you take care of yourselves. And I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but then I think we as your community, we need to hear that so we know how to show up for you, to make sure you take care of yourself, because we need you and we love you. But you've got to take care of yourself. And so I want to know how you do that.
Well, I'm still coughing from the flu I had in December. Excuse me. See, it made me make a nervous cough, Lindsay, when you asked about taking care of myself. But the truth of the matter is, I think that for all of us that are doing this work, for you, I worry about Charles. I want to know how Charles takes care of him. I just want to, when you come into my spirit, I'm just say a prayer. And so, one of the things that Allegra and I did is that we knew that this is a career or a calling that can really burn you out. And so we really built some safety precautions or some protections for us, because we're like, hey, this is our company, this is our business, and let's create what we want for ourselves. And so we each take a month off every year, and my month off is coming on February 1st, and I'm very excited. Yes. And we also hold each other accountable to take a weekend off every month, right? So where Allegra will cover me, we have another amazing midwife that works with us named Hiroko, and we just back each other up. And so that's one of the ways. And then, Lindsay gave me a pass to her pool, so I go to her pool.
This is true.
But it's hard. It's really hard. And I'm a mom of 6, and I have 5 beautiful grandkids. I have a beautiful partner. And, it's just taking care of oneself is just a work that we have to do every day. And it's not perfect, but I really just try to do the basics. And my friend Anissa, beautiful acupuncturist in the back, everybody needs to see Anissa.
Everybody needs to see Anissa.
Yes. Everybody needs to see
Whatever your
Anissa.
ailment is.
Anissa is so intuitive. She'll text me when I'm depleted and just be like, time to come in and get some needles, time to come in and get some herbs. And I'm like, how does she know? Because she knows. And so, I just think it's a way that we all can learn about how we can just kind of take care of each other, because really is what it's about. And we have to, like, I always say to my clients, like, I can't tell you that your nutrition needs to get better and that you need to rest and that you need to walk if I'm not doing it. So, I do my best to eat well, to rest. Like y'all know, Miani knows I'm in bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock if I can. It's true, right? And it's just, these are the things I do. So it's really that kind of like, no, I don't go out. I'm really happy this was at 2 o'clock, not at 8. So, it's just that. It's just doing the best that we can every day, really every day trying to say, like, did I eat? It's time to eat again. Yesterday I ordered the most expensive breakfast because I walked out the door with no breakfast, but it was like, I'm worth it. I'm worth a $50 breakfast because it's going to keep me going, right? And then the first mom that I saw yesterday hadn't eaten her breakfast and was starving. And so I just took that breakfast and cut it in half, and I shared it with my postpartum mama, and we just ate together, So that it's just, we have to take care of each other. That's what community is all about.
Yeah. I'm going to call her out, though, because I'm pretty sure you helped me deliver my baby while you were on your break, your month off. I'm pretty sure most of my care happened during your month off.
It was that.
She's stuttering, y'all.
Well, you see, what happened was, no, but she needed me, and that, to me, what I saw is that God had lined up a period of time where I was off. I also wrote a grant during that month off, which I didn't get, and I'm pissed. But God had opened up this whole month, and Elaine needed my time. Like, our visits were not 1 hour long. They were like 3 hours long, 4 hours long. Like, I would go over Elaine and Jonathan's house, right? And Jonathan's like, you want me to make you some food? And I would be there all day, but they needed it. And I had the space, and I had the time to give her. But I listened to Spirit. I listened to God, and I'm going to do what I'm being told to do. And look what happened because of that. Look where we are now. And like I said to Elaine when she asked me to join her in her advocacy work, I said, I'm so excited to see what God is going to do through us. So here we are. I'm of service.
Beautiful.
Thank
you, Kim. I am so glad, I know you have to go, but I'm so glad that you mentioned Anissa in the room, because Anissa is an acupuncturist who is insanely knowledgeable about Eastern medicine. There are so many success stories I have heard about the ways in which she's changed people's health trajectories. But she's also so much more than an acupuncturist. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that when you sent me to her.
Elaine was like,
I was like, I don't like needles. Did you hear me?
She was like, she's so much more than an acupuncturist. Why didn't you tell me?
She was a therapist. She was a friend. She is also an herbalist. I'm convinced you're the reason my son came out 9 pounds. And if I had known that, I probably would have gotten scared out of doing a home birth. But I just want to acknowledge you, because I think it's so important for all of us to know where the support is in the room. Yeah. And Sunflower Wellness.
Sunflower
Wellness on Instagram, and her practice is open to people who are not just, we all need a little acupuncture and a little Anissa in our life. So thank you, Anissa, for everything that you've done for me and this community. And y'all, check her out, seriously. Do we have time for one more question from Mara Braca-Keel?
Yes. It's Mara.
Yes. Kim's like, Okay, we're going to make this tight and concise and cute. Go ahead, Mara.
I just wanted to say thank you. We get fed in many different ways, and I'm certainly fed today, and reminded of purpose, which is a practice of memory and intention every day. But I just wanted to share, and I do have a question. I want to add to the alignment and the God whisper. We all get whispers, but we have to act. We get whispers and we get distracted. We get whispers and we get scared. We get whispers and we get overwhelmed. And we get whispers and we just don't do anything. And I just want to thank the three of you for doing and acting on the whisper. I want to talk about my whisper. I opened up a writer's colony, and selfishly, I'm not going to go into how it's set up, but the point is, one of the part of it, I have a section sort of kind of is for established people who also need a place to just write And selfishly, I don't get out because I am always writing. And so I get to ask my friends to come. And we get a chance to be together. And we get to have moments in the hall because sometimes that's all we have as mothers and bosses and all the things. Is that me? Oh. And Elaine, and I got to witness Elaine and Jonathan's path, the journey and the path that they took. And I don't know if you remember this, Elaine, because we had some long talks in the office. But I witnessed her stress of what she was going through and the transition of being not a mother to a mother, and she was trying to get it all done. It was in that space. And she was stressed, and she was trying to look for the care at the best level and the care and trying to keep taking care of all the things that she already had on her plate and the care. And my heart just broke. And I said, I don't know if you remember this. And I said, Elaine, and I was overwhelmed even trying to help solve all the doctor issues you were having. And I remember saying, Elaine, you're being called. Sit still. And the next time you came in the office, you told me about Kim. And then you talked today about the nervousness, about even though you knew it was right in your spirit, you were still struggling between the systems that were already in place that say this is what we're supposed to do. And Jonathan was there too. And we were just saying we got to trust. Our intuition is God's whisper, is God's daily conversation to us. And I think one of the things I'd like to add to the conversation of change is actually listening to ourselves and to listening to the whisper. And I'm sure a lot of us have been moved today. I can barely talk. So I'm already thinking, I know the impact of storytelling. I know what I can do with this, that. But I want to question to you what you asked, Charles. I'm hearing, you guys represent a grassroots change that's barely hanging on. And I think even today, if we all gave, we can keep Kindred open for a month and keep you on the road for another month. But that's the taxation and your question, you can't sustain that. So the question I have is, when you talk about these institutions and you mentioned the insurance company, where do we direct the beehive? I know about the bill. We all signed. At least we can do is do this. Like, we can do that. And we're going to follow that. And I think that's something we can do. And I understand how to direct that beehive. But of these institutions, where do we call them into accountability, and where do we start? Is it insurance? Is it politics? Is it the top 3 companies that are benefiting from our dollar? Where does the beehive go first? And then we'll probably know how to go second and third.
Excellent question. Excellent question. Excellent question. Thank you for that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to prioritize them. Politics and policy. Insurance companies and corporations, right? And then employers, large employers / companies that we spend our money with, right? Because oftentimes they're different sides of the same coin, right? So we should ask question, if we are, like a lot of us, clicking fanatics on Amazon, what type of benefits is Amazon providing for their mothers, right? How are they spending their dollars? One of the things that I know of that that's one of the companies, we're starting on the Whole Foods level, working to shape a benefits program. Through Whole Foods, they have something that's called Whole Care, that they actually develop an internal benefits package. And so the idea in this pilot would be to craft, as you said, what is it that we see we want to optimize? How do we envision mothers receiving the best care? What does that look like? And then let's study it over the next couple of years, side by side by Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? And so that is something that we can use our dollars, use our voice to hold other companies and corporations accountable for, right? And so we have to go back. And so the importance of taking a step back of pushing and calling out insurance companies, because oftentimes they hide in the shadows while our frustration is directed towards doctors and care providers. When at the reality of the situation, oftentimes these providers are wonderful people that are simply trying to do the best they can within this machine that is, and the insurance companies are pulling the strings, right? So that would be my prioritization. Policy with our elected officials, making sure that regardless if we're giving somebody our vote, I don't care if it's for president or it's for your local dog catcher, they need to prioritize the well-being of mothers and babies, right? Insurance, and then the places we spend our dollars. And I'm happy to talk a little bit more with you on how we can expand with some specificity about the manner in which we apply that pressure.
Any company, any politician, any insurance company moving in the direction of change?
Yes. In addition to Bobbie, I'm gonna give y'all a little teaser, right? I'm gonna share some good news. Paula, who is here, who is a board member, knows this. But next week we're gonna make a major announcement. Y'all can read between the lines, right? There is a large retailer, one of the biggest ones in the country, that may or may not be based in Arkansas, who we are partnering with to pilot a program. One of the issues, my home state is Georgia, right? We grew up in Georgia. Georgia, ironically, has the worst maternal health outcomes in the country. Wow. Okay? Which is ironic because we moved from Atlanta to California, which is supposed to have the best.
Right.
In Georgia, one of the problems we have, amongst many, is we have huge maternal health care deserts. Out of the 168 counties in the state of Georgia, there are, I believe, 78 of those have zero obstetric care. Part of that is because we have refused to receive federal dollars for the expansion of Medicaid and Medicare. There's a lot of reasons why. So what that means is if you're in rural Georgia and you are a mother, oftentimes you have to drive an hour just for a basic obstetric appointment. If you are a high-risk mother, you may have to drive upwards of 2 hours to see a specialist on a weekly basis. So now, can you afford the gas? Right. Can you afford the time away from work, right, the time away from your other children? Right. And we're losing mothers because of these maternal health care deserts. Right. So what we're piloting in the state of Georgia in conjunction with this company is we are going to do maternal health clinics inside of these stores in the state of Georgia, right? And it is going to be integrated. It is going to be integrated with midwifery and doula care. Wow. Stay tuned. So next week, you guys will be able to, hopefully next week. This was actually supposed to be announced before the end of the year, but there were some things that happened, and hopefully this will be announced next week. We'll pilot it in Georgia, yeah.
In how many stores?
So we have a handful that it's gonna start in the hopes is that it will be in every, I almost dropped it. Every store, in certain key locations throughout the state. So we're gonna start with about half a dozen.
Wow.
Rolling out, yeah.
Thank you for ending on that note, because now I know that we are walking out of here feeling uplifted and energized. Thank you so much. You
Thank
guys,
you all.
give them a round of applause. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you for being here.